In today's episode, I talk with Merlin Matthews about male conditioning. From childhood, boys are taught outdated scripts. Don't cry. Don't show weakness. Be the breadwinner. Be the lone wolf. And now society labels these traits toxic and confusing. We talk about the changing gender roles and how you can self-regulate and co-regulate using several practical tools which can help you to manage your emotions and reconnect. Welcome to Man Quest Define Meaning, where we help men navigate modern life, find their true purpose, and redefine manhood. I'm your host, James, and each week, inspiring guests share their journeys of overcoming fear, embracing vulnerability, and finding success. From experts to everyday heroes, get practical advice and powerful insights. Struggling with career, relationships, or personal growth? We've got you covered. Join us on Man Quest to Find Meaning. Now, let's dive in. I believe men are being conditioned, programmed in a bad way from childhood by their family, school, and society as to what men should and should not be. Now we're being told that being this way is toxic and wrong. And furthermore, men are not being taught or shown better ways. Hello, Merlin. Can you tell me more, please?
Yeah, conditioning happens to us humans up until the age of 6. We're in the theta brainwave state and we suck in and learn all the things about how to walk and talk and ride a bike and whatever. And we're amazing. We're sponges and amazing at learning, and we can learn loads of different languages if we're in that situation. However, the one issue is that we don't have any discernment and we just believe whatever we're told. And then when we develop discernment, the problem is that we are like the fish in water and we've only known the sort of our situation. And then we filter out things that don't tally with our existing beliefs. Then we start self-policing, we start policing each other. And at school, I was taught various things, and from my family, I was taught various things. And some of those were not good lessons, and some lessons were pretty omitted. And I wasn't taught how to fight fairly. I wasn't taught very good communication and listening skills and relating skills. And the examples I was given by my family were questionable at best. And my understanding is that there are skills that we can learn and that it's worth putting the effort into that. Money is another one that school didn't teach me, sort of what money is, how it works, how to deal with it, how to relate to it. And whether that is a conspiracy theory or whether it's just how it unfolds, who knows? The issue, as I see it, is that men are confused about what it is to be a man these days. And there's a lot of conditioning. If I'm a real man, I should be strong. I should be brave. I should be the breadwinner. I should be the lone nasty one. I should be the lone wolf. I should do it myself if I'm a real man. And that comes from societal stuff like James Bond, Clint Eastwood, Jason Bourne. They do it themselves, and they're tough and they're brave and they don't show emotions. And all the don'ts. So don't show emotions, don't show fear, don't show weakness, whatever the hell you do. And there's some validity in this, because if I'd have shown weakness and vulnerability and stuff at school, it might have gone badly for me. Don't be feminine, don't be gay. So there's a whole load of shoulds and a whole load of shouldn'ts, should nots. And the really nasty, not proof, but the nasty result of this is that 3/4 of suicides are men. And often your and my mutual friend, Joe, kills himself. And we're like, shit, I had no idea, because Joe had never said, hey guys, I'm struggling here because of the lone wolf conditioning. Got to do it myself if I'm a real man. And because don't show weakness, don't show vulnerability, don't sort of And yeah, I've got truth bumps. A family friend, their boy killed himself, age 16, life and soul of the party. And even his bloody parents didn't know that he was struggling because of this sort of all this masking and all this conditioning. And it's nuts. And yeah, let alone our imaginary mutual friend Joe, the mum and the dad didn't know, and his siblings and his teachers and blah 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 didn't know. And it's just, yeah, it is, as I see it, it's due to conditioning and due to men not opening up and not having networks and support tribes. And if one of my things I revert to a lot is our time in ancient prehistory in tribes and stuff. And my take is that now I think I'm more sophisticated and clever because I've got a computer and I've got an education and blah blah. I think I'm a whiz kid's smart chap. However, it's only a thin veneer on millennia of evolution. And so the desire to fit in is very strong. And back in the days, we would have sat around the fire and we would have had a small tribe and we would have shared what was going on, our struggles, our challenges, and we would have known what other people's situations are going on, and we would have known it intimately. And now I'm living in my little box on my own. And I think of people in London who are living in their little boxes, and then they're travelling in on the tube maybe, or they're now working from bloody home, don't even go in on the tube to work. And yeah, just a lot of isolation. And with men in particular, isolation is a major thing, even before all the COVID mayhem kerfuffle. And yeah, sorry, that's a bit of a ramble.
There's so much to unpack there. I was jotting down notes. Oh my word, what's going on? But first things first, I do believe the school system is definitely outdated. There needs to be, because when I left school, I was never taught how to use money. And there's this idea with money, there's so important to know how to use money properly. But then also, there's this idea that I suppose our parents are always trying to do the best that they know. That's what they were taught. That's what their parents were taught, and so on and so on. And I feel like there's a huge change coming on. The fact that we're talking about this conversation and there's so many podcasts and different people talking about this, and we can see things that are happening so clearly, is an indication that things are changing. And I feel like it's going to get worse before it gets better. It's almost like we need to go through that dip. But how do we come out better? How do we come out on top so that we are able to change how we think, especially along the lines of how men should be, how men shouldn't be? I feel like over the last probably 50 to 100 years, women have stepped more into their power. There's been so many centuries of women being suppressed, and now that they're stepping into their power, we don't, as men, don't know how to take that. Because we were told that, as you said, we're the breadwinners, we have to be brave, we're the ones that protect. Now, our roles are slightly changing, and so we don't know how to be this new version. And it's very confusing. It is very confusing. And from my own perspective, it requires that we start to do, as I call it, the work. We start to work on ourselves. We start to look at our emotions. We start to delve deeper into ourselves. We start to look at where our limiting beliefs are holding us back. And we start to really step into our own power. Because even though we're being told that we should be brave, we should be the lone wolf, we should be this, we should be powerful, we should be strong, are we really actually in our full power? And obviously now we're just open even more floodgates.
Oh man, I've been jotting some notes. So school, there's a chap called John Taylor Gatto, Gatto, and he was teacher of the year a few years. I compressed this. And basically, he was teacher of the year in the state, teacher of the year in the city, and he was pretty cute with teaching. And at his awards ceremonies, he was lambasting the compulsory schooling system in America. And he, after he retired, wrote a fat book, which is, you can see it, read it online for free, called The Secret History of American Education, something like that. And he was saying that the education system is designed to dumb us down. And he said, even if I am a good teacher with a good heart in a good school, the structure is such that sort of there's not much I can do. And he was saying it's based on the evolution of it was at the time of the Industrial Revolution, and that it was from the Hindu caste system and from the Prussians. And the Hindu caste system, you've got 10% of the population controlling 90%. And basically, it's making cogs of the machine for the Industrial Revolution. Anyway, that's a rabbit hole. But yeah, GATTO, there's a lot on there I can share you, or you can find out. Changing, yes, there is a monumental change that has been happening. And my take is that, wow. So women have been suppressed. I am very much in favor of women. I have mothers and daughters and lovers, and women are good. Two thumbs up. If I had more than two thumbs, they'd all be up. And women have not had the vote in the past. Women have been treated as possessions and chattel. I like the thing of walking the woman down the aisle as the father, and then you give them to the new husband, and they're now the possession of the new husband. And there's a whole load of mess in that. And now women are running companies, women are running countries, women are capable. There's nothing that says they're unable to do that. And as I see it, the issue, which you alluded to, is that in my father's time and in my grandfather's time, it was real clear what the male role was. Off to work, put bread on the table, and the woman would run the table and would look after the kids and blah, blah, blah. And I'm not saying that was a good situation. I'm not saying that either party was happy or winning in that situation. However, as a man, I knew where I stood. I knew what my role was. And now that women are working, and there's a thing about two income households and what have you. But then if I'm not the breadwinner, what is my role? And then fitting into that is that back in the day, the men are generally physically stronger. And so men were digging up roads, we still are, and dangerous jobs and what have you. But men were used for their muscles. And now we've got, and even since the time of the Industrial Revolution, we've got machines doing the grunt work. And now, like right now, the softer skills are a lot more needed and useful, separate to the AIification. And so women have their conditioning, and I'm not an expert on that side of it, but yeah, be a nice girl and looking after other people, not looking after herself. There's a whole sort of rabbit hole. And women are more conditioned around the soft skills, more developed about the soft skills. And I don't believe that women are inherently better at soft skills. It's just they are conditioned and trained and taught and practiced at it. And something that is clear in the statistics, in the 80s, with education, not with education, with work in the 80s, 4% of lawyers in America were women. And it was very hard. And I'm not good that it was, but it was bloody hard for women to get into work and get into the upper echelons as well. But only 4% were women. And now, or a couple of years ago, it was 40% of lawyers are women. And my take is that's a pendulum that's swinging. And I don't think that it's 40% and we're there now and it's going to stop and that's how it's going to stay. My take is that the pendulum is properly still moving, maybe accelerating, I don't know. But with the acceleration, what I do know is that of the graduates, university graduates now, or a couple of years ago from the statistics, 70% of graduates are women, meaning only 30% of graduates are men. And there's a lot of guys who are checking out, who are staying in the basement and playing computer games and just sacking off relationships. There's the whole thing about statistics of the number of people not in relationship, not having partners, not having sex, just checking out. So that's a little bit about women. Do you want to bounce on that before we go to the doing the work and stepping into power?
No, let's step into the power. I think it's just quickly, just going back to you're mentioning about but men. A lot of more men are basically sitting on computers or not really knowing where they are. And I think one of the key things that all human beings need is connection. But in order to have connection with the outer world, we need to start to build connection with ourselves. And I think this is our idea that men have to be strong, can't show emotions. But in order to connect with ourselves, I feel we have to go through a phase of allowing ourselves to connect with our own emotional self. And I've learned this the hard way. Getting to our own emotional selves, connecting to our parts of ourselves that feel scared, parts of ourselves that doesn't feel seen, parts of ourselves that really struggle in these situations. And I think as we start to embrace all these different parts of ourselves, quite a lot of them have been pushed down over the years, especially from childhood, we start to realize and we start to embrace these parts, especially like the inner child. And when we start to embrace these parts, I feel like we're already whole, but we start to feel whole because these parts of ourselves actually start to be seen, start to be heard, start to be acknowledged. When we start to do, that's where the power is.
I hear you, and yes, I resonate with that, sir. I do. The connection part, my take, there's two, again, this sort of ancestral thing. There's two bits. One is human babies are literally born half-baked. Because of the size of the pelvis and the size of the brain and stuff, we have to be born before we are cooked or ready. And we take another 9 months when we're out of in the world, so to speak, of developing and growing, and the brain's developing, the body's developing, and what have you. If you compare that to other mammals like a deer or a monkey, when they're born, they're off. They're with the tribe. If they're an antelope, within minutes they're walking with the tribe, or you get munched. Or if you're a monkey, you're hanging on to the parents and you're a lot more compos mentis. And so humans are hardwired for evolution to seek connection and to get connection. And then the grown-ups are hardwired to give attention, because otherwise the kid's going to die. And so we, as adults, you and me adults, we find things with big heads and big eyes cute and attractive, and there is a hardwire to look after it. And there's a study with, I'm a geek on the science and the studies. There's a study with, I forget which ape it was, which family of apes, but the caring, nurturing thing is that if you have a crying baby ape, then the female ape is not necessarily the mum. The female ape is crying baby. Oh, pick it up, give it a cuddle. I mean, it's all right, mate. And a male ape will sit there for a while and will not pick it up, not twig for a while. But after a period of time, I don't know the time, but after not that long, oh shit, a little, pick it up, give it a pat. There you go, give it a hug. And the other connection aspect from the evolutionary thing, when we were living in tribes, which is for millennia, if I had got kicked out of the tribe, it was likely a death sentence, because the reason humans are so successful is the collaboration and community and connection. Humans is way weaker than a chimp could just, a smaller chimp could just rip us limb from limb. A tiger's got the pointy teeth, and we're not that wonderful in a physical thing, but it's the collaboration. And so the desire to stay in the tribe and to conform, and there's loads of science and experiments on conformity. And so we do need community. And I believe that the isolation and the living in boxes and getting distracted by our little phone boxes and I believe that is bad for us. I believe we do need connection. And then coming to your question about connection to self, there's a few different bits. So starting off with the conditioning for men has been, and it still is to some degree, boys don't cry. That's a bloody famous one. Stiff upper lip, walk it off. Just mustn't grumble. Just fucking get on with it. Crack on, mate. As opposed to feeling the emotions. And I said, I basically, all the do's and the don'ts, and don't feel emotions and don't express emotions. Anger's about the only emotion that is socially acceptable for a man to feel and express, albeit that is not these days is not well looked on, but we can dig into that as a whole separate rabbit hole. And so women are more conditioned to be okay to express emotions. But there's a separate thing about women being mercurial in nature and up and down, and that's their normal state. So it's challenging. Sorry, post. So yeah, it's not good to express scaredness or to express I'm struggling. And as I mentioned earlier, if you have a school, it's also interesting. With up until sort of kids are, I forget the numbers, 7, 8, 9 type of thing, then boys and girls are really freaking similar, and they all play, they all hug, they all cry, they're all just kids, normal, same kids. When boys get to a certain age, and be secondary school and stuff, then there is distinct divergence on the boys wanting to be tough or seen as tough or seen as strong or seen as brave and seen as not sensitive, not emotional and stuff. And it's just squashing it down inside. And my take is that, sure, I can squash the emotions down inside. It's a classic male thing, just fucking squash it inside. But if it's still in there and I'm going to suffer and pay in the long run, it doesn't just evaporate or compost, it's all inside. And so I believe it's better to deal with the emotions. And so now, as grown men, there's a whole thing about lordy. So I remember clearly, age sort of, I think 18, 19, I remember very clearly being smug, being level emotion, compared specifically to women being the up and downy. And I was like, yeah, I'm smug. I'm not super happy. I'm not super sad. I'm stable. Smug, smug, smug. And now I can see clearly that was just me suppressing my emotions. And now is a whole project of digging in and exploring what are the emotions and feeling the emotions and sitting with the emotions. And I talk about kind of like a palette of emotions. And there's wheels of emotions, and there's primary emotions, and then it breaks down into more subtle emotions. And so I describe it paint by numbers when I was a kid. It was paint by numbers. And if I've got 3 colours, I know I can blend them. But with 3 colours, you can do blotchy pictures. But if I've got like 10 colours, I can do more nuanced thing. And so I believe one of the useful skills as a man is to develop my emotions and my feeling so that I can get more subtle and more distinct, both with my understanding it and then with communicating with other people.
Yeah. So let's just quickly clarify. When you say up and down, I assume you mean the menstrual cycle.
No, that's a separate thing. But women are, with this mercurial nature, that it's more happy, sad, and up, and it's not the sort of the 28-day cycle. And separately, they've also got the life cycle of the maiden woman, the crone as the middle, the mother. It is just in a day or in an hour. Women are a lot more up and down in the moment. And mercurial is the technical term for it in the literature. Yeah, the menstrual cycle is a separate thing. Now, there's okay, I'm not a woman and I'm not claiming to have the answers. Please don't bite me. There's something about the premenstrual syndrome, and if a woman has been suppressing her needs, desires, wishes and stuff, then it comes out more sort of bitey, expressive at the premenstrual window. And this can this may tie into the perimenopause when there's a drop in estrogen, and estrogen is the molecule of giving a fuck. And if someone is perimenopausal or menopausal, then there's a fucking nuance. then they don't give a fuck. And all their fucks have been given. And they're a lot more, what about me? And as opposed to looking after children, looking after the family, looking after all the other people looking after, when they're menopause, there's a lot more, what about me? Does that answer your question?
So what I'm going to do, just to the listeners out there, I'm going to get probably 2 or 3 women on the show to talk about the menstrual cycle and the different cycles, because it's so important for us to know so that we can support our partners, so we can support our sisters, our mothers in the best way possible. So just to clarify that.
I've done a course with a friend called Ishana Spires, and she does menstrual training for male partners to understand it.
I might get your details. And I'll see if I can get her on. Going back a little bit to when you're talking about how the male chimpanzee would leave the young, I think there's a level of, especially as parents. Now, I'm not a parent, but I see it all the time that kids might start crying. The parents walk across to their child and say, "Stop crying, what's wrong?" But their crying's their way of releasing emotion. So what are we actually telling our kids when we're saying that out loud? And I feel like it's uncomfortable. I've been my niece and nephew before on a table, and they started getting rowdy and crying, and it's very uncomfortable. So is it because we're not used to comfort? We're used to comfort, and we're not used to discomfort. So there's a level of almost as well. I mean, there's so many different avenues here of actually allowing ourselves to feel into discomfort, because within discomfort, we're able to overcome kids crying in the middle of a supermarket. We're able to overcome obstacles. We're able to overcome all kinds of different things. And you also mentioned we've lost the ability to be in tribes. We have. Hands down, we have lost the ability to be in tribes. You still see them over the world, but like modern society, like UK and the US and Europe, there's this loss of tribe. But again, men's groups are popping up, different groups are popping up. But it's that place that we haven't got anywhere to talk about our emotions and how we feel and how we can release this fizzy bottle that's building up.
So there's a few different questions in there. So the stopping crying thing, I am a parent. My youngest is 18, my oldest is 27. I've served my time. I've had the snip, no more. I want some Merlin time. The stopping crying is a famous thing. And the issue with that is it trains the kid. It's not okay to cry. It's not okay to feel. And it comes back to my thing about stuff it down inside, as opposed to, okay, something's going on. And if I'm the grown up and I have a little bit more understanding, skills, perspective, and I've messed up on a bunch in numerous and various ways with my kids. They'll happily tell you this. And if I was doing it again, I would definitely have some different things, and I would make mistakes still. So speaking to the kid, okay, what's up? And working out what the problem is. Tired and hungry, or angry. Grown-ups, same thing. But then kids don't have cold, but they don't have the nuance or the skills to know that. And so the idea, as I understand it, is to teach them the skills. And in an ideal world, as the grown-up is co-regulating, instead of hugging and breathing and stuff, it's okay. And I can see, and also acknowledging, I can see that you're feeling upset, pissed off, tired, whatever it is, and helping them to recognize the difference between those emotions and feelings. And there's age-appropriate things. Okay, what are you feeling? What can we do about it? But initially, helping and co-regulating them, like cuddling and calming, and then giving them the skills and tools to self-regulate, because there's going to be a time when I'm not there, or they're at school, or in the playground, or the wood, or whatever, on their own, and then they're feeling angry, upset, tired, hungry, and then the aim, or at some point they're a grown-up and they're doing their own thing, but then the idea is for them to be able to self-regulate. And this is, again, it's one of these skills that we don't tend to get taught. Some people do, but in my experience and understanding, a lot of people don't.
Yeah, skills. So important. So I've been through my own challenge, which I'm not going to mention on here. But one thing my friend has said, I obviously had a chat with a few people, and the one thing that he said was that so for self-regulation, it all comes down to the basics. And that is, if you look at the root chakra, are we getting enough sleep? Are we eating what we need to eat? Are we keeping ourselves physically fit and healthy? Are we, where in our life do we struggle with security? So that could be through money, it could be through relationships, it could be through love, it could be family. And how internally, what's going on internally inside ourselves to help us start to turn that around and change the feeling of security. Do we have a roof over our head? And all these simple things help me realize that if we just go back to the basics, we can start to ground ourselves and we can start to feel better. And I feel like when we start to self-regulate, our body start to relax. And that's when other stuff comes in. That's when we have the space to allow creativity. That's when we have the space to allow intuition to come through, when we allow ourselves to feel into our emotions. But I feel like it's almost we need to be calm and relaxed first. So much of society is all about stress and the hard do attitude that you have to work hard, you have to go and do this, you have to go and work and get a job, you have to have a family, you have to get married, you have to go and blah, 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 blah. And it's this idea that it's as simple as just, I think just that conversation with my friend just gave me that realization that it's as simple as just going back to the basics. And so the question here is now, what skills can people start to include in their daily lives to start to co-regulate, to start to self-regulate?
Nice question. Basically, yeah, you're talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which totally makes sense. And breath. So I think if my main teacher says that when emotions are up, intelligence goes down, and scientists can measure this with blood scanning on whatever the blood scanning tool is. And yeah, if someone is under stress, the blood goes more to the hindbrain and less in the prefrontal thinking brain. An example of this is the reason is for survival and the hardwiring need to survive. And back in the day, the tiger's coming to get you, fight or flight or run. And an example is that if we are having an argument and then I go next door or it finishes, oh shit, I could have said this, I should have said that. And all the good answers and the good points come up. But when it's all, then I don't think the good things. So breath is an interesting one because it is both autonomic, being on automatic, and when you fall asleep or if you're knocked out, then you still keep breathing. And it's also under control. So it's both. And so that's a good way in to controlling. And then there's a thing about the mind, body, and emotions are connected. And if you influence one, it has an influence on the other. And the body is the easiest one to influence because like I could do some star jumps to wake up or to change my state. And so taking some deep breaths or the parasympathetic side, which is a big breath of exhale breath, then a long exhale. And the long exhale or slightly longer exhaling triggers the parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest, the relaxing bit. And box breathing, there's loads and loads and loads of breathing aspects. But that is one of the quickest ways to calm down. Touch is another one. My anchor partner's come up with a thing which she calls belly, we call belly, which is really easy. And if we are stressed, if tensions and aggro and what have you, one of us says belly, and then we just pull up our tops, or we say, this is my belly, which is like dogs and wolves and stuff. if we're dogs and we're having a fight, a wolf's having a fight, if we go, oh, no, okay, I surrender, I lie on my back and I show my boy, Jesus, I show my belly, and it means, okay, yeah, you got me. And in that situation, in a wolf thing, the wolf doesn't go out and kill them because it's a pack, it's a teamwork and that. And it's so when I show my belly to my partner, I say, this is my belly. I'm being vulnerable. I'm being weak. Not weak. I'm being vulnerable. And then we hug and we put our bellies together and we have no talking. We're just hugging and connecting. And that's co-regulation. And then some breathing and we calm down. And then we carry on with whatever the discussion or stuff is going on. Another nice tool is to take 2 minutes, take 5 minutes. And again, I'm talking about if I'm also, then my thinking brain is not there. So saying, look, okay, I'm going to take 5 minutes. I'm not abandoning you because that can trigger sort of rejection and fear. And I still have a running away habit or tendency or pattern. And so it's saying, look, I need 5 minutes. I'm a bit strung out. I'm not at my best. I'm going to come back. I'm just going to have a little walk around the block, maybe do breathing, whatever, nature, tree, call a friend possibly, but then just come back. Okay, and she can do the same. And just, okay, and now what is the situation? What's the data? What are the emotions? What are the feelings? And let's talk about this in a more calm and rational way. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So I'm going to add a few in there as well. So with the self-regulation, I think one thing that we don't like to do, especially men, is to feel our emotions. So just about, and now and again, I find it difficult. I do really find it difficult just to sit down. And if we're feeling overwhelmed or we're feeling angry, frustrated, maybe we're scared or we're sad or we're grieving, to allow ourselves to sit down and just to tune in with our body, to drop our mind into our body, and then ask ourselves, where in my body do I feel a sensation? And then what is the sensation? And then if it's sadness or grief, you can do a couple of things, I think. You can either put your focus and attention and just sit with that feeling, or you can ask that feeling, what does it need? In this moment, what does that feeling need? And I noticed, I think it's me mentioned quickly, you mentioned the word weak earlier on. I think we don't need to move away from the word weak. But I feel like we need to start to embrace, because I feel like we have both the strongness and the weakness in ourselves. So if we allow ourselves to embrace the weak part of ourselves and to integrate it and to really have a conversation of what do you need, that might be our own self-hug, or wrapping our arms around it. It might mean that we just say that to that part of ourselves, that I love you. As simple as that. I love you. And that, I think, allows that part of ourselves to really be seen. So I'll give you an example. Recently, I've started to acknowledge parts of me that I seem to have pushed away or have been ignoring. And one part was the crying part of me. And so I've allowed myself to really move to the part of my body where I feel that crying part of me, and to really sit with it and to ask it, what does it need? And quite often, all it needs is a hug. And once it had that hug, it quiets down. It's there. It feels acknowledged. It feels accepted. And it becomes part of me again. And then co-regulating, one of the best things you can do if you have the people around you is hug. Not a typical English hug where you're just like, yeah, you doing, yeah, that's it. But proper, it's ecstatic dance festivals I've been going to and retreats. They teach you how to properly hug. And so you need to step in close, heart-to-heart connection, wrap your hands around and literally allow your breath to sync with their breath and just be there for 20, 30 seconds. Even with men, do it with men. It might be uncomfortable to start off with, but do it with men. I'm a retained firefighter, and at my station, I've just started to implement a little bit of hugging with regards to the guys. It's still probably level 1, level 2, but it feels like they're starting to embrace it a little bit. And I think that's what we need more of. We need more embracing our vulnerable side, our emotions, our things that we used to indicate as gay. So like hugging, hugging another man was seen as gay. Whereas it's one of the best things that you can do is hugging another man, because you're showing your vulnerability and you're able to connect more deeply with that person.
There's a lot in there. I'm famously huggy. The typical male hug is a really A-frame, keep the genitals away. And it's that sort of slap on the back. It could be a shaking with one hand and slap on the back with the other hand. So we're keeping our arms in between. And I remember at school, like gay, that's gay, you're so gay. It was like the biggest insult. And I didn't know what gay was. And it's a thing. And it's also with men, and I might meet you in a work situation or a social situation or a men's circle or whatever, and I might think, James, he seems like a solid guy. He seems like he's on my wavelength. I'd like to get to know James. I'd like to hang out. I'd like to get to know him and stuff. But then, due to my fear of rejection and due to my not wanting to seem gay, I'm uncomfortable sort of asking. And then it might be that you, on the other side, are thinking, Merlin seems like a solid fellow. He's got his head screwed on. I'd like to spend some time to get to know him, blah, 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 hang out and walking, cycling, whatever. But the pair of us both want it, but we don't want to be rejected and don't want to be seen as gay. And we talked about this in more than several men's circles. It is a thing. Hugs is definitely good. You mentioned earlier about the body and feeling the body. You had some juicy, good tools there. Kudos. My understanding is that at the moment in our society, there is a major overemphasis on heads. And I touched earlier on about I'm sophisticated, I'm clever, I'm what have you, as a human in this day and age. And I've got my computer and my television and my car, and I'm all so sophisticated. And I think part of it is with science and technology and the brain. And we can do all these things. We're freaking amazing. We're fantastic. And this and cutting off from our bodies and not looking after our bodies and not feeling into our bodies. And one of the men's work things is dropping out of the head into the body and feeling the feelings and feeling the emotions. And it is definitely, it's a journey, and there's some practice and and it's good. And something else you were talking about is weakness, and my framing or reframing of that would be softness and vulnerability. And there's a lady, Brené Brown, who's done a load of work on the power of shame and the power of vulnerability. She's like world expert. And she says and makes a compelling scientific case for having power in vulnerability. And the male macho sort of, I'm strong, is a lot of, there's some brashness and overcompensating. And it's not healthy and it's not sensible, is my take.
Yeah, there's some big stuff, but it's the idea that as men, especially, and women, that we have to change our ways at this moment in time. We've hit a point now where things are changing so rapidly that we have to change with the time. And it's more along the lines of doing things like our own emotional well-being, looking at our mental well-being. The thing I'm reading at the moment is The Power of Now, which I've read about 3-4 times now. And he talks about allowing ourselves to be the observer. The mind can be, especially for people with ADHD, can be the thing where it's just continual. I think we have to learn, and I might be stepping out of line here, but we have to learn how to start to observe. So rather than being the person in the head, we need to observe what thoughts, and it's hard initially because you don't know whether you're actually stepping out or whether you're still in there. But with practice, you start to be able to observe your thoughts. And then what I've noticed, so I've tried it quite a few times, is that the more that I notice and watch the more gaps I have between the different voices in my head. And obviously then, once we start to be able to have them gaps, that's where the peace starts to come in. That's where I feel like we start to have that sense of, as he calls it, nothingness. That sense of oneness, as they call it. That's, even if it might be like 2 seconds, that building it stronger. But also, I think yesterday I had a chat with one of my friends, and I tried to jump into the conversation straight away, but she made a great point about, before we actually get into the conversation, perhaps we could have a 1-2 minute check-in to be able to voice what's going on inside us. And obviously, I know that you do that in men's groups, and it's that idea of just take a few nice deep breaths, and then just say what's going on for you in the body. What you say in this moment, I feel a little bit of fear in my chest here. I feel some sadness. I feel some grief. I feel joyful. And once you're able to start to voice them, and you hit that kind of like completion, you're like, oh, you're relaxed and you're more present because you've been into the body.
I absolutely concur. And yeah, with the various men's circles I run, we have a check-in, and it includes exactly that. And then what's up and what's going on, what's big in inner and what's big in the outer, and big good and big bad. There's a chap called Viktor Frankl, wrote a famous book, Man's Search for Meaning, and he was in one of the Nazi concentration camps and survived. And he set up, I think it's called logotherapy, and it was Freud, Jung, and then Viktor Frankl, and then Rogers. And one of the things he said is that between stimulus and a response is a gap, and it can be a freaking small gap, but he says in that gap is your freedom. Oh man. So if you and I are having an argument, or me and my partner are more likely having an argument, heat discussion, what have you, and I fuck up and I make a mistake, and I'm just out of order or make a mistake. I'm fallible, I'm human, I have it. And then what might happen is that 2 days later, I go, oh man, and I come back and I say, look, sorry, love, I messed up. That was out of order, rude, short, whatever. I apologize. I will endeavor that it doesn't happen again and unpick the learning. And then my hope and vision is that through unpicking it and through the practice and through doing the work and the lessons and what have you, then one day later, I go back to her and say, I'm sorry. One day after whatever the incident, I come back and say, I'm sorry, I messed up. And then keep doing the work. And then 2 hours after the thing, I come back and I say, sorry, I messed up. To 1 hour, and then to straight after, and then I do work in progress. Just as I'm about to make the mistake, say the inappropriate, wrong, unpleasant, whatever thing, I go, okay. And again, it's a journey, and there's a thing about learning the skills, doing the practice, and not beating myself up about it. And it's because, I make mistakes every day because I'm human. There's no perfect people, and I'm not going to be the first one. I'm not the Dalai Merlin Zen master. I'm damn good at a bunch of things, and I find a lot of things tricky, and relationships is a big one. My sort of where I've got to with relationships at the moment is that I am a human, and I've had childhood issues and trauma, and I've had issues and trauma and bullshit with past relationships, and I've been hurt on the conditioning, what have you. And I want connection and intimacy and contact, and at the same time, I don't want to be hurt and rejected. So there's a sort of I want it, I don't want it to push me, pull you. And then heaven forfend, the laws of physics say that the human on the other side, they've also had their flavor of conditioning. They've had their abuses, they've had their past relationships, and they've been hurt, and they want connection, they don't want rejection, and they've got all their stuff. And then trying to get the two of us to communicate, it's the laws of physics say it's going to be a project. And at the same time, there are skills and practice and holding space and getting a third party, and there's loads of juicy tools. And that's what that's part of what the Man Academy is about: teaching the skills, sharing the skills, and learning the skills together and implementing them together And the implementing is really important because speaking from very personal experience, it's really easy for me to get high on the workshop and it's, oh, it's great. Yeah, yeah, good. Or I can a good podcast and, oh, yeah, fantastic, nice. But unless I put the stuff into action, it's just mental masturbation. And it's, yeah, I feel good. It's the dopamine. It's a feel good. Yeah, great. But unless put into action, it's pointless. Not necessarily pointless, but it's not pointful.
Yeah, it's a nice final point to today's podcast. Is it's not about perfection. It's about continual progress. It's very easy to get into the mindset of, oh, I have to be perfect. I have to do this, especially in a morning routine. And I've been there and I've done it. And and then eventually you might miss something and you're kicking yourself. But it's about, I find for me now, I've shifted into that place of what do I actually need? And I'll have a list of things and then I'll pick the things that I need. Can you tell us what is it that you do and how can people get in contact?
Sure. Just a couple of, have I got time for two little brief things? Wicked. So one thing that comes from some of your earlier stuff is that as a child, I came up with, picked up tools and things to cope, to make meaning of it. And the problem is they must have worked to some degree because that's what I did and used, coping mechanisms, skills, strategies, whatever. And the problem is that if I'm still using those now as a grown-up and they're not appropriate, they may have worked now, but they're not appropriate for me as a grown-up. But again, because of a lack of learning the skills, and there's an expression, there's a whole story I won't go into, but the war's over, you can stop fighting now. And then the next level, which one of my teachers, Kenny DeCruz, talks about with parts work, is if my inner protector, who's been on the case and basically is trying to protect me. And so rather than saying, take a hike, inner protector, I don't need you, you're useless, you're slowing me down, you're stopping me, whatever, it's giving that inner protector a useful task and thanking it for its service and giving it a useful task. You asked about doing the work and stepping into power, and my very honest truth is that I have been living with the handbrake on. I feel sure I'm not living in my full power. I know that there are levels and levels of more of all of my mental and physical and emotional skills and capacity that are still to be unlocked. And again, doing it in community, learning the skills from the experts around the world and putting it into action, which is with the Man Academy and other people too. And I believe strongly that a really big underpinning sort of foundational issue and problem for myself and for, I believe, pretty much everyone is around self-worth and self-love and self-concept, which is overlap in areas. And if from childhood conditioning and beliefs and traumas and stuff, if I believe that I am not worthy of success and relationships and goodness and what have you, and then it might be that I land an amazing job or a goddess lands in my lap or I win the lottery and so I got loads of money. But the laws of physics, and there's studies of this with the lottery thing, in that you come back to them, like, I think 5 years later or 3 years later, and they're back where they started because their sort of thermostat or their belief system is set at a certain level. And one of my teachers says that you can't exceed the level of your self-concept. And so working on that, which is and again, it's a journey, it's a project. I don't have a magic wand, patoif, there you go. And again, learning it together. So the Man Academy, my website is man.academy instead of .com. It's man.academy. And it is about learning skills together in community and implementing them. And as I said, there's a lot of isolation and there's a lot of skills that we don't get taught, and yet they do exist. And so it's learning them. And the idea is for it to be open source, where like Firefox and Thunderbird or the Ubuntu operating system and Linux operating systems, that different people chip in and it improves to version 1.2. And then different people chip in, it improves to version 1.3 until it improves. And co-created because as I said, I've not got all the answers. And I know that you, who we haven't actually met, I know that you have got a whole load of skills that are much better than me. And I'm putting my bottom dollar that I've got a bunch of skills that are better than you. And that's just because that's what we've done over the years and the decades and stuff. No judgment, no shame. It's just how it is. And so harnessing the different people's skills and pulling those together and sharing and learning. And one of this sort of opening up. And one of the nice things with men's circles is, and this is not just me, this is numerous people have said, that sort of I might think that I'm a total freak and I might think I'm the only person who's experienced this or who's thinking that, who's afraid of whatever, who's desiring the other. And then when we go, sometimes we've got the same topic, we go around and it's, you too, and you. Bloody hell. I thought it was just me. Because of the lone warrior bullshit and because of the don't show weakness and don't express emotions and don't open up and don't show what's going on. And it's, so learning together, man.academy. We do men's circles and coaching, occasional events, and I'm just about to launch a membership, which is going to be very good.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Merlin. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you.
Appreciate it, James. Nice one. And thank you, everybody, for listening. And put it into action. Accountability, brotherhood, and coaching don't need to get it through me, but accountability is a secret weapon because 90% of the time I know what I need to do, and it's just a question of doing it, and accountability helps. The brotherhood is really important for someone who's got my back and also someone to give me a gentle kick in the arse if I'm not doing what I say I want to do or I say I'm going to do. And the coaching, there's two aspects. One is the coaching of the questions. And so why are you doing that and what might happen and helping you to dig into yourself. And the other bit of coaching is teaching the lessons that sort of different people have distilled, experts around the world. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Man, A Quest to Find Meaning. If today's conversation sparked something in you, take a moment to reflect, then take a step.
Remember, real growth comes from action,
Not just insight. If you found value in this episode, share it with a friend, leave a review, or reach out and let me know what resonated. Your feedback helps shape the journey we're on together. For more conversations like this, make sure to subscribe and stay connected. You can also follow me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn for updates, tools, and upcoming guests. Remember, it's not about having the answers, it's about daring to look.